Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday, January 26, 2023 session for the Transportation Lean Forum Community of Practice. I love the photo that we have here. This is outside of Boston, but it could be outside of Denver here. It could be outside of many states, including the states for our keynote presenters. Welcome, everyone. I know we have a few folks that are still joining in. We have a few preliminaries, and then we'll be on to our main sessions. Sam, next. My name is Gary Vansuch. I'm the Director of Process Improvement for the Colorado Department of Transportation. I'm your host today for our session. Our keynote presenters are Marcia Tope from the government of the state of Iowa and Serena McArthur from the government of the Province of New Brunswick. We have an exciting session today. We do have a few preliminaries, and then we'll be off to our keynote sessions. Next. You will see QR codes throughout various portions of the slide deck today. You can utilize your cell phone to actually access QR codes. This is a test QR code. It takes you to techtarget.com. It tells you all about QR codes. I've tested this morning. If you hold your camera over your screen, these actually work, and we're going to be using those for various initiatives today. Next. And that includes the QR code at the very top here. You can scan that, and you can actually access the live Q&A document for putting in questions for Marcia and Serena and everybody else. Our agenda today is we do have a few housekeeping and introductory items. Then Marcia is going to talk about the value of value stream mapping, a case study. Serena is going to be talking about change management. We're also going to be talking about partnering between our community of practice and the AASHTO Organizational Management Subcommittee, some good opportunities there. And then we have our usual open forum, asking anybody, our presenters, but anybody else in the community questions that are on your mind. We're also always glad to hear about success stories. Your success story on improving something might be somebody's current challenge. And it can help the community, can help individuals, can help us all in our efforts to improve public service. Next. We do have Transportation Lean Forums members from across North America and Europe. I invite you to put into the chat pane where you are tuning in from today. Again, our presenters are from Iowa and from New Brunswick. I'm here in Colorado, as many other folks are. Go ahead and start putting some of those folks in. I see Utah, I see Pennsylvania, I see more folks from New Brunswick. I see Oklahoma. That's wonderful. More folks from Iowa, Lebanon, New York. It's going too fast. I can't read that fast, but that's great. Thanks, folks. We have folks from across North America and from across Europe who join in. And it's wonderful that we have the capability to do that through webinars like the ones today. Thanks, folks. Continue to add that in. We'll include that in the notes for the forum today. Sam, next. It's always good to go back to what our mission is, as to provide a community for transportation agencies to share and support each other regarding lean and continuous improvement. There's a slightly different take on the mission. Sam, if you could go next. I am wearing my lucky Denver Nuggets basketball team tie. They're doing really well this year, but even when they're not doing well, we always support the home team. And that is true for our Transportation Lean Forum too. We're supporting the home team. The home team here is scattered across North America and Europe, and we're here to support each other. So this is another version of our mission. We support the home team. Thank you for being here as part of the home team today. Sam, next. And I want to let you know our webinars are recorded. We are recording today, and we actually post those recordings to our Lean Interchange website. That's the website for our Transportation Lean Community of Practice. That recording will be available in about 4 weeks. We actually have recordings for almost all of the prior webinars going back a decade. We are actually in the second decade of the Transportation Lean Forum. Sam, next. And if you do have any technology challenges, do put those into the chat pane, but sometimes your technology problem is with the chat pane itself. So we actually have provided the emails for two of our intrepid interns who are producing today, Rylie Wieseler and Samantha Millison. You have their email addresses there. We will certainly put those in the chat pane also. If you do have any issues, please do reach out to them. They are ready to assist. Next. And we have currently 47, 48 now. We have more people logging in. We have a lot of folks on. So to be able to provide the best experience for everybody, I encourage you to put your phones on mute during sessions. Remember to unmute if you have a question, and we'll have time for questions after each of the keynote presenters, and certainly during our famous open forum session that we have at the end of the session. But when you're not talking, please do remember to mute. Thanks. And remember to turn off your VPN. VPNs are wonderful, except they do chew up a lot of bandwidth. So we encourage you to participate today with your VPN turned off. Next. And of course, it is always wonderful to have a community where we're supporting each other. Again, supporting the home team. If we were in the Nuggets arena, we would be applauding and we'd be so loud we couldn't hear each other. Now, we do have applause through the chat pane. I encourage you to clap under those reaction portions of the chat pane. All right, next. And this is a great place to applaud. I want to welcome Marcia Tope from the government of the state of Iowa. Marcia, take it away.
All right, good morning, everybody. Well, first I want to start by saying thank you to Gary, Samantha, Rylie, and all those involved in the Lean Transportation Forum for asking me to present today. I love this forum, and exactly the reason is what Gary said. We're all here to help promote lean and continuous improvement on our quests. So that was one of the things I wanted to make sure whenever Gary reached out, because I said the case study I'll be presenting today is not related to transportation. However, it's about continuous improvement, and that's why we all are here. How can we make our processes better? So again, thank you for this opportunity. So before I jump into my actual presentation today, I want to share just a little bit of a background to set the stage. When the state of Iowa started our lean journey, we were first introduced to improvement of processes through a Kaizen, and it was great. It was wonderful because we had great improvement. We had processes that were running better, had decreased lead time. And so when we got into the weeds during our Kaizens, we knew that we had found a tool that was really great. But what we also learned is that we had some lessons that maybe were a little more painful. Because our Kaizens, we tried to solve world hunger and world peace all at the same time. And so we knew our scopes were really big because we weren't quite sure where we were trying to target. And what we've come to realize is that our resources are really very valuable, and we have to make sure that we are utilizing our resources, i.e. our staff and their time, the best way possible. And really identifying where to target our improvements so we know how to do that was important. And so that's where we have learned over time the value of a value stream map. So for today, what I hope you take away from our presentation is that a value stream map connects those that are involved in the value stream and how that adds value to the process. And the other thing I hope you take away is how a value stream map adds to the value of laying out an improvement plan that's strategic so that your processes are improved. So before I jump into my case study, a little 101, which you'll see on the next slide. So for those of you maybe not familiar with value stream mapping, a value stream map first talks about what are the customer's requirements. It's important for us to understand what our customers are looking for from us in our process. So it lays out our customer requirements. It also lays out at a very high level each of the steps from a customer's request through the flow of the work and getting that request of a good or service back to our customer. The next thing it lays out is data. It helps us to identify process time and wait time so we can understand any delays or hiccups in our processes. The other thing that adds value from a value stream is that when we think about those high-level steps, it helps us because oftentimes what we find in government is our processes are not just contained within one single person. Our processes may cross bureaus, divisions, or across agencies. And when we can look at that at a high level, it helps us to understand how work flows across the entire system. So what I'm going to be sharing today, and you'll see on the next slide, is a case study in regards to Iowa's State Revolving Fund. So just so you have a little background on what is State Revolving Fund, or you'll also hear it referred to as SRF. The State Revolving Fund is an option of a way to finance the design and construction of Iowa water and wastewater infrastructure. Within the State Revolving Fund, there are different pillars. One of the pillars is the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. And that funds wastewater treatment, sewer rehabilitation, stormwater quality improvement, as well as a non-point source projects. So when we think about the Clean Water Loan Program, it's publicly owned wastewater treatment works, including those owned by cities, counties, sanitary districts, and utilizing management organizations are also eligible. For non-point source projects, both public and private entities are eligible. This may be our farmers, our landowners, watershed organizations. The other pillar I mentioned was the drinking water. So that's our state revolving funds for water treatment plants or improvements to existing facilities, water line extensions to existing unserved properties. This drinking water loan program would be for public and private community water systems. So that's a really, really high level of what SRF is. If you would like to dive deeper into knowing more about State Revolving Fund, that link is within the presentation today. So what did we know about our State Revolving Fund? So what we knew was our State Revolving Fund was administered jointly by our Iowa Finance Authority, or IFA, as well as our Department of Natural Resources, our DNR. So this is just one example of one of our processes that covers agencies. So not only did we know it covered two agencies, what we knew was within our Iowa Finance Authority is that they were responsible for the applications on the loan approvals and the distribution of funds. And what it covered were 3 of their team members. So we knew we had 3 team members from Iowa Finance Authority. We also knew that the SRF process involved the Department of Natural Resources, but not only just one area, that it crossed different areas within their bureaus as well. And so when we looked at the DNR portion, we knew that they were involved in the permitting aspects as well as the engineering and design approval and construction permits. So we knew they had about 9 team members that could be touching the process at some time. As with all of our continuous improvement projects, we know the customer is crucial. And with this project, we knew that we had different customers that could be included in the process. And so one of the primary customers we knew was the cities, because that's the individuals that could be asking for our loans. And so this particular process, we asked 2 cities to join us in looking at what could be improved. We also knew we had the customer of engineering firms because they're the folks that submit those plans for approval. And so having them at the table was key to help understand what's not working for them as our customers. One of our final customers was our EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, because they had the final approval of any intended use plans that they received. So if you're keeping track, our total team members was 17. It's a little larger group, but we knew we needed that many at the table in order for us to look at that process at a high level from a system perspective. The other things that we knew about our SRF process is that there was new people involved. You know, sometimes there's turnover, there's change. And so we needed to get them at the table and make sure we're all on the same page. We knew there was some duplication of efforts. It was just a matter of identifying where and why. We also knew we had a good process, but there's opportunity for improvement in any process. And lastly, this particular process had been reviewed in 2005. So it's continuous improvement. It was time to look at how can we do things better. So when we thought about all those pieces, how were we going to know where to even start? Absolutely, value stream mapping was the first thing we thought of. So we knew we needed to see how the work flowed at a high level. We had to understand the requirements and we had to understand the rules, and we had to help do this through analysis of the data. So what I'm going to share with you next is the actual pictures of the process that we looked at. And what you're going to start to see is how we built upon each piece. So as I share with you our case study, what I want you to start to think about is layering a cake. So you have your first layer of cake, and then you maybe put some frosting on it, and you have another layer with some additional frosting on it. Each layer adds to our flavors of our cake. And so what I'm going to share with you is our approach that we took and how each step added value to helping us know how to improve our process. So our first layer that we looked at was identifying our customer and our requirements. This added a value to understanding the SRF process because we knew what the customer wanted. And as I mentioned in the last slide, we had customers in the room. So we weren't guessing, we weren't making assumptions. Our customers told us what they wanted. This added such value because when we thought about our process, we could always relate it back to say, doesn't match those expectations from our customer. So there's value added, number one. On the next slide, what you're going to see is the next area that added value, which on the next slide you'll see is our workflow. So the next thing we had the team do was say, what were those critical steps? What are those things that you do in the big buckets to help us see how the work flows? So what you're seeing on the screen represents all of the different individuals involved, the different areas. So we color coded it because we wanted to see where the work was handed off to those, whether it be internal bureaus or across agencies. So we use that visual management of color coding to understand those big buckets. After we understood our big buckets, we added our delays with our pink stickies, as well as how the work flows. This added that value to the visual of understanding the flow. So on the next slide, you're going to see the full picture. This might be a little unique of what you're seeing as a value stream map, because it certainly does not represent my 101 where there was just one. But what you are seeing on the screen is what our team needed. They needed to understand the flow of work for clean water, for drinking water, and non-point source. The value of adding all of these onto one value stream map is that those who do the work were understanding what was being done and by whom. So on the next slide, what you will see is the next layer. The next layer adding value to our understanding was data. The team started to discuss what's our process time? What's our lead time? I am so sorry. I skipped a slide, so we can go back to the requirements. You have more to come. So our requirements slide. So that was the next piece that we added was our requirements. The piece that this added for value. Whenever we talk about the requirements that teams start talking about, we take each of the steps and we say, what is the requirement to get the work completed? And they may talk about, we have code that says we have certain things that we have to do in order for that step to be completed. It could be there's certain data points we have to collect. It could be we have an application that's filled out and each of those applications have certain required fields. So this next layer adds value because of the intensity of the discussion of understanding what is needed to complete the step. But what adds the value is whenever we do this part in our value stream map, we start actually from the right side of the map. So this might be a little different than what we're used to when we start at the left, but we start at the right and we ask the last person in the process, what do you need to complete your step? And when we talk about that, then we can work backwards to say, are you getting that information that you need from the area before you? That adds value to that discussion because the person then before them can start to understand why they are producing certain pieces of work that they've been asked to produce, and they can understand, is it the right pieces of work? So it adds value to their work as well. So after that layer, then we jump into the data layer. So jumping ahead there. So the next layer we talk about is that data add. And we start to talk about what is your process time? What is your lead time? What is your % correct and accurate? Because then we can start to understand if it's not correct and accurate, where is the accuracy missing? And we can work backwards in that process to say, well, how can we change those steps? How can we look at things differently? The value add to this discussion is it starts to identify those pain points. Why is there so much delay? Why is something taking so long? And the discussion can be a little different. And so this adds that value to going back to, are we meeting our customers' requirements? So the next section that you're going to see is that transition point. Once we have all those layers and all that value added discussion, the team can start to identify those pain points or opportunities. So based on the picture, it looks pretty busy and there's a lot of information there. But what you see on those blue squares are our opportunity clouds. Those involved in the process have had the discussion and layered all those pieces, and they can identify kind of, you can almost see in categories and areas. This is where we need to take our time and really focus on how we can make improvements. So they take that information and they transition it to the next slide, showing our future state. And all of those value added discussions leads to that future state where they've identified the value areas to make improvements. What you see on this particular picture with the yellow circles and plus signs, each of those represents the opportunity for improvement. Had we not had all of those value add discussions prior to this, the team wouldn't know where to start. In this particular example, they identified 12 different areas that they could provide opportunities for improvement. And this adds value to where they're going to be spending their time and focusing to make it better for our customer. So I'm just going to share one example from this particular slide. There was one part of our discussion where there was a delay, and they talked about the delay, made it visual. They talked about the time, and they talked about why is it required. And what they identified was that requirement was something that had been put in place of when a case should be assigned. And what they identified was they could change when a particular case was assigned. And by changing that, it would allow the work to start 60 to 90 days early. So that was a really big aha moment for the team that talked about improvement and talked about change and impact and meeting the customer requirement so that they could get the product they needed when they wanted it. So a team takes all of their ideas and they make it into the next slide showing a transformation plan or an improvement plan. So some of the items they're going to come up with, they're pretty simple. What I just mentioned was as far as changing when a case is assigned, that could be as simple as going back and looking at standard work. The other things that came out of that was maybe something larger. They identified one piece that they need to dive deeper into a Kaizen event, but instead of doing the whole system, they will be diving deeper into one piece. That focuses their time and allows their resources to, again, take in one piece at a time versus the whole system. Our transformation plans, they include who's responsible, what is it that they'll be working on, and we provide dates so that we know what our timeline is for implementation. So I share all of this with you because I want to share with you the final thing in regards to what is the true value of a value stream. And the next slide shares the true value is the actual results that you get from all of the work and value add discussion. The first thing is the lead time. This particular team reduced their lead time from 21 months down to 12 months. That's pretty big when you're talking about what customers' expectations are. The other value in a value stream map is improved customer satisfaction. The example I shared with you, we had a customer in the room that said, if I can get a decrease from 60 to 90 days just from this one meeting, this has been a win. Our particular meeting lasted 2 days, and he said it was worth my time because I get 60 to 90 days in return. The other value in value stream mapping is that crucial conversation and relationship building. Specifically, this shows the system where it crosses agencies and it crosses different areas. That conversation led to continued meetings. It's continuous improvement versus it's a one and done. This particular team now meets on a weekly basis and continues their improvements bites by bites instead of trying to take everything at once. So in closing, on my next slide, I hope what I have shared with you today is that the value of a value stream is the fact that it connects those who do the work and understand the work in seeing what the work is and being able to improve it based on what the customer requirements are and putting into place a plan. That value stream mapping is an important improvement strategy, and what it provides is a strategic plan to how to make improvements. So I hope this adds to your toolbox on a value stream map and how it can have an impact to your continuous improvement quest. And I appreciate the time and sharing this case study to you. If you would like to continue to build your toolbox and learn more about value stream mapping, I've included 3 resources that I can share with you, are great resources and have been a learning tool for myself. So thank you for your time today.
Marcia, this is terrific. Wonderful material. Folks on the webinar today, we have shared the link to the main page for Marcia's Office of Lean Enterprise in the state of Iowa. We do have another keynote presentation, and of course we have some questions and answers at the end, but we do have a time for a few questions. And you're getting some very nice comments coming in through the chat pane, by the way, Marcia. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Are there folks that have questions? We do have Samantha and Rylie provided the link to the a question a link where you can put questions in. I'm also glad to have folks unmute or put them in the chat pane if you can't unmute. I do see one coming in already. It says, Marcia, fabulous. What was the calendar duration to result in the transformation plan, and how much effort, time approximate, did this take? And that's from Mustafa. Could you address that?
Absolutely. So for time frame, for just starting at the beginning, our team was together for approximately 2.5 days to complete their value stream map and identify their implementation plan. Their implementation plan was set over time periods of a year. Again, remembering that some pieces were very small and would be implemented in 30 days. Some were quite larger and we knew would take a year's time. So this happened to be a project that we did prior to COVID, and right when the team got done, COVID hit. And so that impacted their timeline just slightly. Otherwise, the team continued to do their work virtually and make their changes happen. So again, it was incremental changes over a time of a year, but I don't want to end it at a year because this team continues to meet today on a regular basis. I believe those were the questions. I hopefully answered that.
All right, that's great. Those are the questions I see. Sam or Rylie, do you have any questions coming in through the link?
There's a couple more questions. Oh,
go ahead, Rylie.
There's 2 questions in the chat, one from Shelley. How did you convince the teams to come together to talk about this?
Great question, right? Especially when you're talking about across agencies and you're talking across bureaus. We don't always talk openly to each other. This team, they worked together obviously previously in 2005 on a Kaizen, and they already had open communication with each other. So this one wasn't as tricky, I would say. The other thing is when you think about, are we getting any feedback from customers? So that's always a driving force. The other key thing in this particular one was leadership support. The leadership from both agencies know that this is a priority to make sure that we have the state revolving fund working smoothly as possible for our customers. So leadership were already on board saying, bring the team together. Let's continue to improve it. So those are the factors that made it easy to bring the team together.
And Rylie, there was another one you said?
Yes, from David. Did you transfer your paper VSM into an electronic document? Can you share the result if you have it?
We did transfer it to electronic. This particular group happens to, we used Google. We used Google Draw for this, or Google Diagrams Net for it. I will have to double check with the agency and see if I don't have the final product, I don't think, in my possession, but I will check with them and see what I can provide, and I will send that over to Samantha and Rylie.
All right, that's great. Thanks. Anything else? One more question, perhaps, before we go on to Serena? All right, if not, Marcia, thanks. Stick around. We may have more questions in the open forum session. Samantha, if you could go next. Our second keynoter today, and this is a great place to use the applause button in Zoom, Serena McArthur. Serena, take it away.
Thank you guys so much for inviting me today. I followed you guys on LinkedIn, so I was so honored to receive the request to present. So I'm here today to talk about change management. So why are we doing change management in departments and organizations? So change management is an evolving discipline. It's been around since 1947, and we're continuing to evolve today. In 1947, we started with Kirk Levin's change model. We've got information in from Cotter on the lead and change and the 8 steps. Where ProSide has come out with a lot of great tools. And then in 2014, we're now a recognized profession through the Association of Change Management, very similar to the Project Management Institution certification. Even though we've had a lot of different disciplines talk about change management, 3 main themes are emerging. It's people focused, leader focused, and ensuring that change sticks, that stability element of it. But what does that really mean when we say change management? What it boils down to is that we're helping people manage through a change. What is their current state? Where is the future state? And how can we help them move from that current state through that transition period to get to that future state? And when we look at why organizations are implementing change, so why are we doing these projects that people need some help through? It's doing it to introduce new technology. We're looking at improving our design processes through such tools as value stream maps. We're looking to help meet our customer needs. We're introducing or changing our regulations, our legislation. And by not changing, we could be adding confusion. We could be missing different opportunities to make those processes more efficient. We could be adding frustrations, and we could actually be experiencing lost productivity if we're not implementing change. But then we also know that projects are failing. And when we look back about why projects are failing, some of the common reasons we're seeing is that there's a lack of leader support, unclear roles and direction. We didn't understand how much effort it was actually going to take to put those projects in place. Competing priorities. People have more than one project on the time usually. Lack of understanding of the impact on people, ineffective training and communications, and lack of support when the actual change started to begin. So we know that if we had change management, that their people readiness is a priority when we're looking at the start of these projects. We're making sure that we have time and resources and making sure that it's an embedded and integrated function. So we know that when we start putting change management, we now remove some of those reasons why projects fail. We have that leader support. We have those clear roles and directions. We know a little bit better how much effort it's going to take on those projects. We understand some of those priorities. We have the understanding of the impact on the people. We have the effective communication. We have a training plan. We have some communications plan, and we have that support for people as they start to go through this change. But one of the things that we often hear about is resistance. People are resistant to projects. And often what it is, it's not the project itself, it's the fear of what comes with it. What is that project coming? What is that change going to be about? And a lot of people, when we look back and say, why are people resistant? And we can often say it's 3 themes. It's not aware. So what they might not know about why this particular project, what is it to them? How is it going to affect them? They might not be able. It might require new skills that they currently don't have. And they might be a little bit shy. It's like, how am I going to make sure I can work in that new process? And it might be not willing. maybe the reason for the change is that they don't understand it. So what is it that's going to help them understand why we're going to that change? One of the key things we often hear when we bring change management is people resistance, but it's normal. Some people are going to say, you know what, I strongly resist any change and I'm going to be on the fence. Some people are going to say, oh, I think I might change. They're going to be on the fence, but they'll follow along. And then some people all the time love change and they get excited about change and are enthusiastic. And often on projects team, we'll have a mixture of this, which makes it hard to deal with change as we help on project teams. The other key things to understand is not everybody's going to change at the same pace. We might have a project team of 10 members and some people are really getting and ready to go. And then some people are a little bit more resistant and need a little bit more information. And then to add to that, some people move through change differently. Some people might be really happy about it. And then as they get into Lean Six Sigma projects and we get into the improve, and then they realize, oh, I have to change, they might become a little bit more resistance. And then once the communications and training, they might become a little bit more acceptable to that change. And then also with change comes change fatigue. So in today's environment, change is a given, but it is hard on people. And we can see that through some of these signs of change fatigue. People are complaining. There's a little bit more conversation about what's going on. People start backing up or pushing back on some of that change. Burnout, people are getting tired of the changes. Okay, what's next? There might be some more negativity on it. Oh, we're changing again. But one of the things to keep important is as change happen is making sure, do they understand why we're doing this and are we having those communications? One of the key things too is understanding the impacts that change is going to have on a person. So ProSide's 10 aspects of a change model. When we announce a change, do we take a step back and say, how is that change going to affect people? And we can take a quick look at these different aspects and say, you know what? We could be changing their reporting structure. They're changing a new process. Do they have to change location? And by stepping back and understanding the impact, we can help better prepare them for the change. One of the key things I love to talk about is integration of change management. So change management is not a standalone. It works well with different disciplines. When we talk about critical success factors for any projects, it's that leaders agree on what needs to change and why. Why are we doing this project? Roles and responsibilities. What is the role of the project manager? What is the role of the Lean Six Sigma facilitator? They understand the different priorities of different projects, skills, training needs, effort, and complexity, and change is still supported. So very similar to the earlier slides on this. And we know that by adding change management to projects, we help avoid delays and efficiency when we get into project management implementation and Lean Six Sigma implementation. We reduce the resistance against our key stakeholder groups, which we see in project management and Lean Six Sigma. We help with the accelerated rates of adoption because people understand why we're doing this change and they're bought in and they're involved in the process as a key component of Lean Six Sigma projects. And it helps build our internal capabilities to manage other change that's going to come up. One of my favorite quotes from Jennifer Campbell's book, Talking Change, is if you lead projects, you lead change. Just by the nature of working on Lean Six Sigma projects, we're introducing change. So when we take a step back on my earlier slide and saying change management is helping people through that transition of current state, transition state, future state, really where we get the benefits is when we successfully combine change management with the technical methodologies. So often people say change management and project management. They're very complementary, but very distinct, but they can overlap. And the key is how do we work together? When we look at project management, and I consider Lean Six Sigma in there because we're following the methodology, we're following steps, we have the same goals. We want to minimize the amount of resistance associated with change. We want to lessen the time that it takes to move from the current to future state. We want to build that change capacity and help people adopt the new future way of doing things. And we want to succeed on those projects. It's so disheartening a lot of time when we spend a lot of time working on projects. We get to the very end and those opportunities are not realized. But together, project management and change management can help execute those initiatives. We can help bring people along and get to those results that we were looking for on those projects, and making sure that the people side is also included. So when we take a step back and we look at Lean Six Sigma, it's all about define, measure, analyze, and improve control. We're moving through a different methodology. Change management, we're understanding the current state, help people through the transition in the future. And with project management, we're initiative, we're planning, we're executing, and monitoring and close. So we have overlaps. In the very beginning, we're all defining what the current state is. And in the middle, we're executing, we're understanding what's going on. And at the very end, we want to close projects off. We want to get to that future state, and we want to make sure that we have controls in place to maintain that. So when we layer change management in with different methodologies, it just helps people understand why we're doing this change, helps prepare them as we're going through our planning phase. As we're executing, we're managing the change that people are going on. We're doing the check-ins, we're checking and see how they're doing. And then when we get into close, we're sustaining that change. We're setting people up for greater success. And another favorite quote that I have to throw in is the P in project management is as much about people management as it is about project management. A lot of questions I get asked a lot of time is, how much change management do I really need? And it's a very hard question because change is unique. And that's why it's key to understand those pro-side impacts. How is that change actually going to affect people? And change management is not a one-size-fits-all fit. You need to take a step back about the change that's happening in your project and say, okay, what is it that I'm going to need? Another key question I love from ProSide is how much of the adoption of that depends on people adopting and the uses of that change. And then if that is a strong, if your project really requires people adopting that, how much time are we investing in making sure people are supported through that change and adoption? And what will be different by adding change management in with project management and Lean Six Sigma is that instead of focusing on the technical side, we're now going together and saying we're focusing on the purpose, the people in the process. We're bringing everything together to help improve and have our quicker adoption and realize those benefits and get to that future state. So one of the key things I want to leave you with is some keys to success. So when we look at projects, some of the key components that we have is having a clearly defined vision, communicate, engage people, skills and training, and change to still support it. So it feels like I've repeated this a couple times because it's so key. Clearly defined vision. It's making sure that it's like a bridge, a link from the present to the future. So people understand, where are we today and where are we going? Why are we doing this change? And it helps prepare people for the change and helps people stay focused and align all our activities to this is what we're trying to accomplish. Communicate. One of the important things is communications. Many people fear the unknown, but it's often because they don't know what's going on and they need information. And a lot of times people communicate through different methods. Someone who likes two-way feedback might be different from someone else who needs the details to sit down and read through and understand what the impacts are. So allow for different communication channels, allow time for two-way feedback, and allow opportunity for people to have their questions and say, how is this impacting me? Or I have a little slight question about that. And review progress. Change is a journey. And like with any journey, people need to know where they're at and where they're going and where they've been. And one of the key things we always say now is that you need to communicate 13 times. It used to be 7 times. It's increased now with the addition of when you're working at work, you have the teams. There's more distractions. Engage people. Some engagement skills that some tips are avoid awkward moments. Active listening, making sure that we're listening to the questions that we're receiving. Take a note. If we're always getting a certain question about is there some additional communications that we need to work on? Read in the room. If people are very quiet, what can we do to make them feel comfortable and valued so they can ask their questions? How do we make sure that those people who are typically quiet have a voice and a forum to ask their questions? and always give context. Why are we there? What is the activity that we're working on, and what do we expect from them? And skills and training, making sure that they have the skills and the training to adopt the future state and have the ability to achieve those opportunities. And making sure that change is still supported after go live. One of the key things, the differences in project management and in change management, after project management and the last task is done, they're gone. But with change, people still need some support on making sure how things work in. Is there other skills or is there some training, additional training that we need? So don't let up just because a project has been formally closed off. So thank you. And one of the last things I want to leave you with is my favorite change management resources. So the Talk and Change book that I quoted earlier, ProSite has some great tools and different templates, the Speed of Trust, and of course, Cotter books as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Serena. Terrific material. There are a few very nice thoughts in the chat pane. I don't see any questions specifically. Rylie and Samantha, are there any questions coming in that you're seeing?
I did love the comment earlier too about project management lasts the duration of the project, the same as culture change. So if one change is not handled well, then that does impact future projects. You have to overcome that for the next ones.
We do have some questions in the chat pane for you, Serena, well, on our live Q&A doc. The first one would be, do you have any tips for an organization trying to introduce change management into their projects or programs?
We're just starting that. So I'm with the Province of New Brunswick, and 2 years ago, we set up the Enterprise Change Management Unit. So we've been working on integrating into Lean Six Sigma. That was our first step that we did. And what we did is we talked about the value of adding change management. And we had a lot of conversations about what is getting in your way today? What are your barriers and how can we help? So we talked about some case studies about how things worked well and how when change is not implemented, the value that by adding it, we can help out with those ones. And I also, what we did too, is we started small. We selected a few projects and we said, we want some feedback of how the process is going. And we worked together. And by doing that, we got buy-in, and then it was more projects and then more projects.
Thank you, Serena. And then one more, do most organizations engage a change management practitioner or train existing employees?
We are doing a mix, so like a hybrid. So some of our very large scale projects, we're bringing in external consultants to provide some change management. And then our smaller projects, we are training our existing staff. In the last year and a half, what we're doing now is we're bringing change management into our Lean Six Sigma training program. So as we're working on Lean Six Sigma projects, what are some of the change management resources and practices that they can apply themselves on those projects? We've also started hiring more change managers in our departments to help on project management focused projects.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Those are all the questions that we have right now.
Awesome.
All right. Are there other folks that want to unmute? Again, some very nice comments coming in through the chat pane, Serena. I encourage you to take a look at those. Any questions folks want to put in the chat pane or unmute and ask directly to Serena? All right, perhaps not right now. We do have another short session, then we're going to have an open forum, open for questions to Marcia and to Serena. Thanks again, Serena. Samantha, if you could click next. It is wonderful that we are now in the second decade of the Transportation Lane Forum. It started in June of 2012. Samantha, next. And in the second decade, we want to take opportunities to partner with others that have similar mission spaces and a little bit of an update on that. Next. One of those organizations, and many of your transportation agencies are members of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, and known as AASHTO. One of those key groups as part of AASHTO is the Committee on Performance-Based Management, and a part of that committee is a subcommittee focused on organizational management. Samantha, next. The mission of that of the Performance-Based Management Committee is to provide state transportation agencies, again, there's always an acronym, right, STAs, the expertise and resources to support and enhance performance and data-driven management practices and decision-making. Well, gosh, that sounds a whole lot like Lean, doesn't it? And in fact, it is very complementary to Lean. Samantha, next. And as part of that larger committee, there's an organizational management subcommittee, which has a mission to help agencies, those transportation agencies, achieve organizational excellence and advance the practice of performance excellence. Gosh, that sounds kind of like our Transportation Lean Forum. Samantha, next. There are similarities in our missions. Of course, we are a community of practice, supporting each other on lean and continuous improvement. Committee on Performance-Based Management is looking at stuff that is very much lean, and the organizational management subcommittee is working to support each other. Very complementary. Samantha, next. So we are working with the AASHTO, that subcommittee in the AASHTO organization on some webinars. We have some active planning for that. Newsletters, we have a Transportation Lean Forum newsletter each month. Some wonderful stuff, by the way, in there this month from various states. Thanks again. And so does the Committee on Performance-Based Management has a newsletter. So we're experimenting to take some of our content from our Transportation Lean Forum newsletter and put it into the next issue of the Committee on Performance-Based Management newsletter. Also might be some opportunities for peer exchanges. If you might be interested, we are working to beef up the membership of the Organizational Management Subcommittee, and drop me a note at the address that you see there if you might be interested. Samantha, next. And as part of that, we're interested, particularly perhaps put in our newsletter or in that Committee on Performance-Based Management newsletter, and perhaps even as future webinar material, to find the very best improvements among your DOTs and to spread those. So if you have a successful innovation from your agency, take a click at the QR code here and think about entering that into the link that will pop up. And we'd love to feature that in some newsletters and webinars in the future. That form can, by the way, can also be found on the Lean Interchange Hub. That's our Transportation Lean Forums website. And that both that form as well as the link for the Transportation Lean Forums Lean Interchange website are in the chat pane today. And of course, we'll include that with the notes when we send them out too. All right, we encourage you to do that. We are now at the open forum portion of our meeting. This is where you can have questions. Again, put those into the live doc or put them in the chat pane or unmute. It can be for our presenters today, or it can be for anybody else. And that includes not just questions, but also if you have success stories. Remember, your improvement success story might be somebody else's current challenge right now, and might give them, a little bit of a lead on actually improving a situation they might have. So I want to turn it over first to Samantha and Rylie. Are there any things coming in from the Q&A doc that for the members of the forum today?
Yeah, there is still one more question for Marcia. It says the sticky notes for the time and effort, the orange notes, looked almost like they were forms. What data is on the orange sticky notes?
That's a great question. So what we try to do is we think about what is it the team needs to understand in regards to what they're trying to improve. And so sometimes our data switches just a little bit on what we want to know. And so we always talk about what's our process time, our lead time, and % correct and accurate. So those were our top 3 that we look at. And then we add anything else that they want, that we feel the team would be beneficial in discussing. This particular one, we talked about what is causing their delays. And we also added, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think. This one was done a year ago or so. So we also added what was their delay, what was causing their delay. And then was there technology rework? And so that way we had it specifically listed on the data sheet. Yes, and my color turned purple and I do not know why on my video, but hopefully that answers that question. So we do make each of those a little unique in their forms that we develop ourselves.
Marcia, that's wonderful. And for the purple color, both Samantha and Rylie know that on our team, we sometimes say that technology is wonderful, except when it's not. So this is one of those not times, clearly, but glad that you're still with us, even though you're in, in purple there. All right. Do we have other questions? Mustafa says Marcia from Mars. So I love that. Are there other questions coming in, Samantha and Rylie?
As of right now, we are all caught up on the live Q&A doc. So unless there are any more new ones in the chat or people want to unmute themselves and ask their question, we're all caught up on the doc.
All right, that's great. So folks, it's open forum. It's open for any questions that you might want to pose to other members of the forum, if you have, or to cite improvements that you've made. Time to not be shy about those. Your improvement might actually be somebody else's current challenge. So go ahead and unmute. If you can't unmute, put it in the chat pane, and we'd be glad to read those out. Now, I see this coming in from Joe. Thanks again, Joe, from coming in from the Granite State. Joe is saying New Hampshire is piloting a revised white belt training next month. That's great. Thanks, Joe. We're currently in an online training. We're testing an in-person format, which allows green and black belts at each agency to train new folks directly. Fun project. Wow, terrific stuff. Thanks for sharing that, Joe. Terrific stuff there. Are there other folks that want to unmute or put something in the chat pane?
I actually have a question for Marcia, if that's okay. So when leading and supporting the value stream, you did have a lot of different teams and people involved. Who were kind of the champions and how were they assigned among all of those different groups and people?
That's a great question. So our champions were actually the directors of the agencies. And so they were the biggest supporters. They were the ones that let staff know that it's empowering the staff. What is it that they want to see done differently? So our champions were our directors. Several of the individuals on the team were also the leaders of the areas. So leadership was directly involved. It wasn't just those doing direct work. And so we had multiple layers of leaders involved in that.
Thank you.
I did get a comment in the chat from Julie saying that Arizona Department of Transportation is piloting supporting documents and tools for the standardized problem solving process, helping new leaders feel more confident in how they lead the process.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's fabulous that Arizona is doing that. Thank you, Julie. That's great. So it's new stuff almost coast to coast. That's New Hampshire. That's Arizona, and of course, Serena, you're even farther east than New Hampshire is, and of course, Marcia, smack dab right here in the heartland, along with us in Colorado. Other folks, things you want to share, questions you have, topics you want to bring up for consideration by other folks, perhaps for comments from other folks in the forum today.
I have a question for Serena. So some organizations don't necessarily have the bandwidth to hire a person to necessarily be a change practitioner exclusively. A lot of people wear different hats in an organization. So what are some things that people can do, like small things to start integrating change management into their projects without necessarily having to potentially create a whole change management plan if they don't necessarily have the background or formal training in that?
I love that question. When we started with our enterprise change management unit, we went out to our alignment champions in our departments and we just asked them for some feedback about why change management efforts didn't work well before. And they said we needed to make sure that it was simple for departments, simpler for tools and for people to understand. So for departments who don't have a lot of extra resources, what we wanted to do is take a step back and say, okay, what are the key things that they need to do? And it's communicate. So also talking to people about why are we doing this change and allowing time for communications and check-ins and doing pulse surveys. So by just integrating a few of those principles and techniques will go a long ways to helping projects succeed.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, other topics from folks in the forum today. Things you want to say, here's stuff that we're doing that's worked pretty well. Questions that you have on specific topics. Follow-up questions for our keynoters, Serena and Marcia. Going. All right, sold. A terrific forum today. Samantha, if you could go forward a slide. To close out today, a few things. I do want to encourage you to go to the Lean Interchange Hub. It's the website for the Transportation Lean Forum. We will post the slide deck from today in PDF format and the recording from today within the next 4 weeks. Sometimes the recording takes just a little while. The link's there, and it's it works on a cell phone too, using the QR code. Next. Our next forum will be March. Now, we don't have presenters yet, and the exact date is TBD. We're always working to get good availability from our presenters, always at approximately 1600 hours Universal Coordinated Time, UTC GMT. That allows folks all the way from Alaska to Sweden and every place in between to participate during the regular business day. If you are interested, scan the QR code. You can also contact me directly, gary.vansuch@state.co.us. Samantha, next. And that's the end of the session today. A really big thank you to our keynoters, Serena and Marcia. Terrific material. And as you can tell from the comments coming in, great learning today. And I want to give kudos to our production team, to our intrepid interns, Rylie Wieseler and Samantha Millison have been producing today. And without their efforts, I'm just all thumbs with technology. So thank you for doing that today. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the forum session in March. Thanks, folks.